Journalism is changing, and it's changing very fast. And because of social media, new media, digital media storytelling, especially the social media storytelling, when you talk about people who tell stories on Twitter, on Facebook, on using their text messages and all that, these new storytellers that we didn't have a few years ago are breaking news faster and sometimes, or often actually, better than journalists can do, because sometimes they will be where the story is happening when it's happening. So by the time a journalist runs there, the story has moved and somebody has told the story already. So we think that journalism has to change, has to begin to adapt to all these changes that are happening. Over the last few years in Kenya, we've done a lot of innovation in journalism, and Internews globally is a very innovative organization. And what we do is to think about how is storytelling changing, and how should we continue to lead the thinking in journalism and better the standards of storytelling around the world. We've also adopted in a big way, and it's not new anyway, long-form storytelling as something we want to do very well. Producing documentaries, producing long features, print, radio, and all. And to look at those as these stories that of course will not be told by your average storytellers in the streets, but actually stories that we can also use to engage those average storytellers in a new form that we are now calling the long and short of it at Internews. Is we work with journalists who package these stories, long form stories, and then we narrowcast these stories to an audience that actually engages with those stories by writing back, by tweeting, by storytelling around those stories. So it's combining the long form with the short form that now audiences can do. And we actually narrowcast them in the communities where those stories were produced. The Kenyan government last year released volumes of data that were not public. It became the first government in Africa to release data, public data. And what that meant, we thought that journalism must begin to engage with that data, because over the years, journalists in Kenya have talked about the government not being very good in releasing information. And here was the government releasing the data, but the journalists were not using it at all. So we began to think about how can we do data storytelling, and we were able to talk to a number of people. One of the first things we noticed is, of course, we needed more expertise in crunching the numbers, in working with the databases. And that is how I began to look around for somebody who can help us do that, to do something more intensive. The first training in Nairobi, which was the first data storytelling training ever in Kenya and in much of Africa. We did it in October last year. And this year, we thought we want to take this a step further. We want to make it deeper. And how we did the first one, we brought together journalists. These are experienced journalists in Kenya to do this course, to really get these skills of data storytelling.